Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles. Thank you for joining us for another chiropractic episode from Higher Ground. And if you have not already, make sure you hit the subscribe button, whether you're watching this on YouTube or iTunes or Stitcher or one of the many podcast channels around the world that you can catch this. And so you don't miss any Mile High ticket. Of course, make sure you're on Higher Ground with us at Mile High in June. This is one of the few episodes that actually both myself and the guest is at similar altitudes, pretty close altitudes. We are so grateful to have and to introduce and have with us today one of my favorite people in the chiropractic world, Bill Esteb. I have been a fan of Bill Esteb ever since I was in chiropractic school and attended one of his programs while I was a student. I remember his patient's point of view books on my stepdad Donnie Epstein's bookshelf and having them laying around the house when I wasn't even thinking of going to chiropractic school. And he presented at the first Mile High event we ever held. He runs Perfect Patients, coordinates Perfect Patients with his team. And anytime I get to hear Bill Esteb present, I learn so much. And his wit and entertaining presentation are just always so filled with so much information. So thank you for joining us today, Bill Esteb.
So no pressure.
No pressure.
Well, fire away. What are we doing?
Well, we're going to talk about chiropractic and talk about teaching people to be better at educating their practice members to be great practice members and to how to consume chiropractic in the most optimal way, which actually happens to be a way that benefits the doctor too. So it's a good thing for them to learn. Can you share a little bit of first, though, because some people, believe it or not, may not know you who are listening to this podcast. Can you share a little bit about how you found your way into this crazy chiropractic world?
Well, I'm a professional patient, so to speak. No, I come from the advertising agency world, film production, audio production, marketing. And I was working at a film production company in between 80 and 85. And two chiropractors moved in next door to our offices. And we knew about chiropractors, we thought, but so we ignored them in the hallway. And it was Joe Felicia and Guy Riekman. And they were getting ready to harness this newfangled VCR to use for patient education. Pretty innovative idea, even back then. And so they asked us if we'd like to participate. And if we did, someone from our team needed to attend one of their Renaissance seminars, which back in the early 80s was a 3-day affair modeled after EST, frankly. They tag team taught. It was, I mean, I still remember some of the stories and the metaphors that were discussed during that 3-day session. And I came back, said, hey, we need to help these guys. They're onto something here. Chiropractic is not what I thought it was, et cetera, et cetera. And so we created the Peter Graves video, and we did some work with Russell Earhart and some other folks, and created these patient education videos. And that first video was, I think the director's cut was 23 minutes. And of course, no patient will sit through, for 23 minutes these days for the most part. But I came in through the back door, helping chiropractors communicate the chiropractic message, and began chiropractic care kind of as a research project to write the Peter Graves video. I'm on my 11th chiropractor and my approaching the 41th year of chiropractic care. So it's been an incredible journey, and I'm better for it. And so hanging out with another chiropractor, pretty cool. Love it.
Wow. And I think you've impacted tremendous number of lives, practice member lives, as well as doctors' lives through patient media and through Perfect Patients and through your numerous projects.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the favorite things I've heard you say it in different ways from stage. You said it on my radio show once. You might have said it in conversation with me too, about um, going to you said this, you're in your 11th chiropractor, saying you said before things about going to a chiropractor that can get you to your next level. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I'm often asked when I reveal that I'm on my 10th or 11th chiropractor. Well, what does it take? What do you do to look for a chiropractor? And I have to reassure them that, first of all, I'm not a normal patient. I frankly, I know enough to be dangerous. And so my quality, the way I seek out a new practitioner is probably different than many, but I basically am on a journey to become as fully me as possible. Okay, during whatever lifespan I'm given.
Right.
So personal development is really important to me. So I'm looking for someone who is further down the path, who can turn around and light my footsteps. And so that's taken me into the world of NET. It's taken me into the world of NSA for a period of time. And, just spend a lot of time in the CLA tribe, understanding that. And so I'm mostly interested in someone who can help unblock that. It's the metaphor of Michelangelo, who said, what you do is you chip away everything that's not David. Well, that's what I'm trying to do, is to get rid of the stuff that's not me. And my belief is that success, however you decide to define that, is mostly a shedding process, not an acquiring process. And so that's kind of what I've been on a journey to do. And I found that chiropractors, not necessarily specifically just because of the adjustment, but the adjustment and all the rest of it, the principles and the mindset of how you view the world, has helped that immensely, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very well said. And so then since that's what you look for, and that chiropractic patients around the world are in different parts of their healing journey, they're seeing things from different lenses. When you're creating things for patient media or creating things for perfect patients to serve chiropractors, how does that your experience of wanting to get to your next level and chip away impact what you oversee and create?
Well, if I were to make patient education materials for the people that I would share a similar mindset, I mean, I wouldn't have enough customers to have a business.
Right. No, I totally.
To be honest. So I think probably one of the most important things that I've attempted to bring to the chiropractic profession is what would be best termed as beginner's mind. Because what happens is that when a chiropractor goes to chiropractic college, and I don't care which one, well, I do, but I mean, whichever one you go, you lose beginner's mind after about 90 days.
Right.
So part of my job is I believe is to help bridge the gap between a chiropractor who knows a whole bunch and a patient who doesn't know anything at all. In fact, they're so screwed up because of the pharmaceutical culture that we live in that you've got to kind of start way, 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 way back at here. 1 + 1 is 2, and that's an overstatement. But the point is that just because someone comes in with headaches and back pain doesn't make them a bad person or a bad patient. I mean, that's where you start. Simply because of the cultural notion of why you would see a chiropractor.
Or a doctor, period.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I see so often people, you're right on, people lose that beginner's mind and they almost will judge patients as not being a good patient because they haven't read 40 green books, and they don't have the same worldview, versus that it's our job to bring them across this chasm, that, or as best as we can, or as much as the person wants to go. Your office may not be the right place because they may not want to jump across that chasm, or scurry across or whatever you want to say. In fact, I'm curious how you see this. This is something I see all the time, and I'll use the network example, but I've seen it in all kinds. I've seen it in BGI and upper cervical approaches and so on, where people will be so focused on their approach that they'll get out of school and they'll start the communication with the prospective new patient with, oh, well, you haven't done network, CVP, upper cervical. You haven't lived until you've had upper cervical adjustments. You don't even know. It's the best thing ever. You've got to come and do that. And then I see that they're just crashing and burning. Do you know what I mean, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So how do they get out of that?
Crash and burn. I don't think there's a shortcut.
Right.
But it really has to do with whether or not you're going to show up being focused on you or being focused on the patient. I mean, it all starts with your heart.
Right. So well said.
And the other thing too is I think that there oftentimes is a profound mistrust of patients.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean that they're going to steal your magazines in the front room or whatever. I mean that you don't trust them with health. Mm-hmm. Okay, that they need to be parented, and that's unhelpful too.
Right.
Slapping Diet Cokes out of the hands of patients, and it's just unhelpful. It doesn't work. They just think you're weird, so you lost the opportunity.
Right. Well, I'll remember that. I won't slap Diet Cokes out of people's hands anymore.
That's just an idea.
So in patient media, what is your team's mindset in creating media? What makes it different from others in chiropractic marketplace overall?
Well, first of all, it comes from the patient's point of view.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's probably that's where it starts. Mm-hmm. And then it goes back to the fact that even though I'm a writer and written 10, 11, 12 books, whatever it is, people don't want to read. In fact, some people say that books are where words go to die. People are buying books, but they're not doing much reading, really. So I think probably one of the things that differentiates the patient media materials is that the text is short. We rely heavily on visualization, metaphors, pictures, because we're visual creatures. We try to make as many points as possible in the photo captions. Mm-hmm. Because most people will, first of all, look at a picture and then they'll read the caption and they may not go any further than that. So what we've had to do is to accommodate the digital world we live in today. Is that people are just into sound bites and bumper stickers and slogans. And it's very difficult, particularly those who would like to see the principle expressed in their practice, find it very, very difficult to find people who are actually interested to think deeply and to be curious and to get to the truth. They're off to the next thing. They're off to binge watch something or other. And we just have a culture that is whose attention span is short as a gerbil's. It's just there's just isn't a lot there, and so we've had to, I wouldn't say dumb it down, but just get to the point. There's no long preamble. I mean, the first sentence has to do something. Get on with it. And so my passion about readability means that all of our materials are written at the 8th grade reading level or lower. It's not baby talk, but it's easy to read. Short sentences, words that don't have 7 syllables. It's to keep it simple and most importantly, relevant to the patient. Because after all, it's for the patient.
Right.
The brochures don't do any good in your brochure rack. So
right. Yeah.
Rant over.
The Peter Graves video wouldn't fly in the TikTok culture.
No.
Right.
Now, I do know a few doctors from time to time who have been proud to come up to me after a seminar or whatever and say, I still show the Peter Graves video. They don't want to watch it that long, but I force them to watch it. Okay, well, if you want to use up your third wish so early in the relationship, knock yourself out. But I'm on my 7th generation of chiropractic videos these days. So, and those are 4 minutes long, 4.5 minutes long. And so, the train's left the station. You can't go back. As much as I'm proud of that work, it's 40 years old,
Right. Right.
So.
And again, it has to do with what is going on in the zeitgeist of the time, right? So relative today, it's a different image. And it's there's a famous quote. I'm going to misquote it because I don't remember it. But if I had had more time, I would have made it shorter. It might have been Mark Twain, if I remember.
Yeah, it was about a letter that had been written during the Civil War period of time, which was rather lengthy. And gosh, they had great use of the English language back then. And I think it was like P.S. If I had more time, I would have made this shorter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It takes energy to make things into shorter and encapsulate the values and principles, especially when the person's lived in an allopathic pharmaceutical world.
That's right.
So, and it's an incredible art, and you do a great job of it. I still use, I don't know if it's the most recent generation, but it was a couple generations ago, videos in our office. So what are the trends that you notice are important for us to know in patient communication?
Well, I think one of the things I've noticed is that the newer generation of chiropractors who are mostly digital natives are not interested in a brochure rack because they think Google's a brochure rack,
right?
Which it is. But my point is I can talk about other things besides brochures, but that's just a convenient idea here, is that the brochures are not for your patients. The brochures are for the people your patients know. So your patient becomes a transmission method for the idea, and it helps the patient be able to be articulate. Because if you ask a patient, the next patient you see, tell me, how do you define health? How would you explain what health is? And just sit back and wait and see how many people say, well, to feel good. And it's all about how you feel. And so we've missed the whole functional aspect of it, as well as the nervous system centric aspect of health. So anyway, the trend I see is that if it doesn't show up and you can't put it in your pocket or purse, if it's not digital, then it's old, and so we don't want to do that. So I think that's probably the biggest trend I've seen, maybe in the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And what's one thing? What's an overlooked opportunity in patient education that people may not be doing that they need to be doing?
Showing up curious. What happens is
what you just did, that question that you asked.
Yeah, it has to do with we tend to think that the way you change a person is you outside in them with words. Okay. So we use words as drugs to try to change the behavior of a patient. That's outside in. It's classic symptom treating. Because we think that the problem with patients is they don't know. So for them to know, I'm going to outside in them so they will know. But it doesn't work like that. Never has. Because what you really want to know is to find out about their operating system. And these computers we're using have an OS. It allows us to communicate 70 miles away, but it has an operating system that allows us to do this video.
Right.
Well, patients, each of us have an operating system, and it tells us how often to floss our teeth. It tells us how often to bathe. It tells us how we sleep, on and on and on and on. That's what runs a patient or you or I. Few chiropractors are interested in the patient's operating system because first of all, it's so egotistical and hubris because they think the chiropractor thinks that their operating system is superior to the patient's operating system. And it probably is, most certainly. But that's not how you get someone to adopt a new, better, improved operating system. You do it by asking questions.
Got it.
Questions that most patients don't even ask themselves.
Right.
So I think rather than taking a deep breath and spewing all over a patient at your spinal care class or report of findings, just ask questions. How often do you do this? Why do you do that? Have you ever thought about that? And ask questions to find out what's going on here. How in touch are you with your own body? How many times all the patients are gone, it's just you and your team, and it's now time for your team members to get adjusted. They get off the table and they say, how do people live without chiropractic? Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'll tell you how they live. They are disembodied.
Right.
They are not in touch with their own bodies. In fact, they mistrust their body. In fact, someone comes in with a cold and they're starting to sniffle and sneeze and runny nose and they say, oh, I've got a cold. No, you've had a cold for 3 or 4 days. It's just that you're not aware of your body enough to even recognize the early signs of a common cold. I mean, without fail, if I'm in an audience of chiropractors, I'll say, how many of you in this room, because you are in touch with your body, even though most patients aren't, how many of you can have detected the early signs of a common cold coming on and taken intervening methods to try to stop that cold from manifesting, and we're actually successful at it? And 2/3, 3/4 of the room raise their hand. Happens every day.
Right.
But that's not where patients live.
Right.
So we want to talk about the principles of above, down, inside out. You got patients who aren't even in their own bodies.
Right. Right. You
combine that with the fact that many patients don't value their health.
Right.
There's websites that list over 400 human values. Health and hygiene is one, aesthetics, appreciation, 400 human values. I'm here to tell you that if you've chosen healthcare as a career path, I bet health and hygiene is in your top 10 values. Not absolutely, but I bet it's in your top 10, top 15 for sure. But you come in with, if your next new patient, of course, they don't know this, but if their next new patient doesn't value their health, in fact, it's at position 42, which means they have 41 other things they value more than taking care of this soul package they're in. They're going to come in, they're going to get the relief they want, and they're going to leave. And you can light your hair on fire, but they don't value your deepest value.
Right.
So it would be helpful to be okay with that.
Yes, I get it.
Yeah. Because some patients might have to start and stop care several times before they ever get it. And even then they may not. So who knows?
Right. Right. Got it. Absolutely. And so when you have this world that's TikTok paced or shorter, and people that then it's allopathically minded, or their cultural field has a lot of that, and may not value health, then how do you then want to have your website design explain the difference in that? Or do you? Maybe you don't want that on your website. How to then, bring that into the digital world and what you do in a way that then person has an uptake to, hey, maybe I want to get to know this office or this doctor better.
That's right. Well, one of the things we frequently say at Perfect Patients is to remind folks that the website is for patients. Now, you'll pay for it, but it's for patients.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to decide, is it best to get on your soapbox, beat the drum, and scare away 98 people so you can get the 2 gems?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you lower it and say, you know what, I can beat my drum and stand on my soapbox in other ways. And what I want to do is create a connection with someone who would like to begin the journey. And everyone gets to decide that for themselves. You know, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question. However, I would say this, based upon the crazy times that we're living in, when you start getting deplatformed because you're speaking your mind and you're exercising your civil liberties and your free speech rights, but the people who own the platform, or at least own the search engine, decide that you're just a little too wacky and a little too off as an outlier. And so we're not going to even show your website on the returns that people put in. So you lost the war. Okay. You may have won the battle. You were right. You have a reception, you have an empty reception room. So I'm a lot more pragmatic. My deal is, look, someone who comes in with headaches or back pain or some other neuromusculoskeletal thing, great. That's what they think chiropractors do. Start there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you have a broader perspective, like most people who are probably watching or listening to this have, then once you build trust and you have a connection, then it's the time to up the ante and turn the jets up. Unless you want to just people to come in, spit it out, and move on to something else. I mean, it's your call.
Mm-hmm.
It's your call, and it's just a marketing conversation.
Right. Yeah. And tends to be, some chiropractors choose to be a very one-sided conversation rather than an actual conversation.
Yeah.
Which is then becomes, you get the outcome that's related to that. So then, you know, you've created such incredible material, both in print media and in digital media, for offices to help them communicate chiropractic values in a way that's simple, easy, digestible, little bites, like eat the elephant one bite at a time, rather than you have to give them, swallow it all. When you get to marketing, I noticed this. A lot of doctors spend lots and lots of time on social media and maybe completely ignore their website. Their website's not even found on Google, but they spend lots and lots of time making, Instagram and social media videos of different types. What's the difference between having a website and having a digital marketing strategy?
Yeah. And I think what you're describing is a very commonplace, again, among digital natives who really have taken to the social media scene. The way we look at it is kind of a 5-factor model. We think the website, because you do get to control the content, is the hub. It's the center. It's the centerpiece of all of the online activities that you're doing. And so that's a piece of the puzzle, because even a gushing referral, the patient's going to want to go to your website and check you out first.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did some research way back when, and I think the numbers have changed slightly recently, but we discovered that because we have a means for testing where someone came from, where were they right before they came to the website? Okay, that piece of information is encoded in their search results in their browser. But we discovered that for people who actually became new patients, it was in single digits as to who would become a new patient based on social media who did not get to the website. My point is that the social media may introduce someone to who you are, but the sale is made or not made on the website. So I think that's really, really important. So you've got the website, you've got reviews. That's crucial. Constant, never-ending 5-star reviews. You've got social media, of course. That's part of it. Reputation management, and of course, email. I mean, those are the 5 things that you want to have under control. And frankly, unless you're only seeing 10 people a day, I don't think you've got time to do all that stuff. I don't think you can be a great chiropractor for the same reason you don't do your own taxes or, change your car's oil. You need to sub that out to somebody who does that for a living and can keep up. I mean, we've got this whole department that is every week, Google changes something. Mm-hmm. It's impossible for someone to keep up with it unless that's all you do.
Right.
And so that would be, I think that it's much more than just social media. It has to do with an entire package, and that makes sure that your branding is consistent across all of those 5 different channels.
Well, and I'll tell you, I at times have done that of, look, I grew up in New York. My instructions for gardening, I moved to South Carolina and got a house all of a sudden instead of living in an apartment in New York. And I called my grandfather and saying, hey, can you, I thought it'd be a bonding moment. I said, can you tell me what I do with the yard? I've never had a yard before. And my grandfather, in his New York Jewish way from Brooklyn, said asphalt it. That's what he said. He said asphalt. Just like knee jerk. I was like, okay, this wasn't so helpful. But the thing was, it wasn't a skill set of mine, to work on a yard. Still is not. Never will be. But I didn't asphalt my yard. I decided to hire people to make it look really pretty and beautiful. Yeah. And I've been guilty of wanting to do my website in different parts of digital media. I've recovered from that. And I really just want other people to do it for me and not do anything other than maybe create some of the content for it that they instruct me to do. So it has my flavor and feel and all of that. Because I'd rather do what I do best, which is using these with patients, right?
Because you are the brand.
Right. Exactly. And so, because it can be exhausting, you say, well, I've got to put this on Instagram, Facebook, my website, make sure all matches up. That's a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've seen that, as you know.
Well, again, some people love doing that. I mean, it almost becomes a hobby. Right. That's cool,
Right.
But, I think that we've taken a little bit more of a grown-up approach to that and say, what, these are marketing tools. You're running a business here. Now, we call it a practice, but it's a business. We call them patients, but they're customers. And so these principles in terms of how you convert a visitor into a reception room, new patient, those are marketing skills, and those are not innate. These are learned behaviors based upon years upon years upon years of learning by making mistakes and determining what works by looking at the tea leaves, looking at the data.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, and I think there was a time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've been known to be wrong once in a while. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think for a while you had a pamphlet or a brochure or a free kit that people got or something where it's like questions, like whiteboard quotes or something like that. Didn't you have? Am I remembering that correctly?
Oh yeah. The whiteboard idea of putting ambiguous statements on the whiteboard to provoke a question so we can begin a conversation to plumb the depths of the patient's OS. Yeah, that's on the website at patientmedia.com. It's under the free stuff.
Right.
So there's over 100 ideas and what you might want to talk about in terms of writing ambiguous statements. There's also I think there's 52 Socratic questions. So if you run out of questions to ask patients, there's a new one every week on the website that would give you some ideas about rhetorical questions to begin a conversation. Because again, it goes back to the headspace. If you walk in and there's this thing called table talk. And the idea is that today I am going to ear rape the patient who's lying face down with the thought of the day, because it's just blah, 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 blah. And, by the afternoon shift, you've got it down pretty cold. The problem is you can't see the patient's eyes roll because their head is wedged in headrest paper. but you're outside inning them again. It's non-consensual conversation, and we think we're doing something, and it's annoying and is ineffective. A much more powerful approach would be to ask a question. In fact, if I were in practice, I'd ask the question out in the reception room. Hey, today Dr. Esteb's going to be asking, how do you catch a cold? Be ready with your answer, or ask him a question.
Right.
So that we engage the superior portion of the nervous system, the brain. Because if you go just up here, the inferior portion will follow just about everywhere that brain goes. So really, it's about engaging people. And there's some people that will make it very clear very quickly they're not interested. Okay, just do me. Okay, this isn't my life. I'm not interested in my body. I don't want to know about health. You're the doctor. Just fix me so I can get back to doing whatever I think is more important than my health. Cool. Love them anyway.
Right. And there's a place of holding the space for them to have growth. Because maybe once they get adjusted once in a while, health might become move up on the priority list.
Well, the metaphor that I often use is, if you were to ask a patient, what do you think causes cancer? I mean, we hear about it all the time. Mm-hmm. And 90% of the patients are going to say, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And you move on. That is not the freedom to now vomit onto the patient your theory about what causes cancer. Mm-hmm. You only reveal your beliefs if asked. Mm-hmm. And the good news is you're only going to be asked 10 or 15% of the time. Mm-hmm. But here's what happens. If you will trust the patient, you ask them, so tell me, what do you think causes cancer? And they say, I don't know. I say, well, think about it. I'd love to discuss that with you someday. And you move on to your leg check or whatever you're doing, right? 3 weeks pass. You've forgotten about asking the question. And the patient asks you, so tell me, doctor, what do you think causes cancer? Okay, so that's been gnawing away at them for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Now, when you have a conversation, they're actually listening.
Right.
It's a whole different deal.
So I have a question about this, and I'm asking this because I don't necessarily know the answer.
Yikes.
Which is this thing of the whiteboard and having the question that you ask them, and those are all strategies, skill sets around engagement. You're getting engagement with their brain to think a little bit about what you do, as compared to just tell them stuff. You're using Socratic method is often referred to. Now, in social media and in digital media, that also is very commonly, you'll see the things that get the most engagement, say on a Facebook post, for example, might be, I know now that Facebook is for old people and TikTok's for young people. My kids have let me know that. But in Facebook posts, how many people will get a lot of engagement in asking questions? They'll ask a question about, hey, why do you go to a chiropractor? Or, what was your favorite sandwich when you were having a kid? And then we'll get all kinds of questions. Does that somehow equate to how you build a website or what you do in social media or your ads, to somehow ask a question that engages a person a little bit? Maybe not to the degree of other things, but at that point in the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is about beginning a conversation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has to do with whether or not you want a transactional relationship or a transformative relationship. And you get to choose, okay? The suggestions and tactics that I've shared with you, that Socratic and, writing ambiguous statements and asking questions rather than yakking at patients, that's because that's the kind of practice I'd want to have. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean that that's right for everybody, but it seems to me, again, I thought about going to chiropractic college back in 1992, I guess it was, and I was talked out of it, and thankfully I was.
You remember that far back?
Oh, yeah. It would have changed my life. And Joe Felicia told me not to become a chiropractor. He thought that I could have greater impact if I would keep one foot in chiropractic and one foot in the real world. And he was correct. Mm-hmm. But my point is that there is an incredible emotional price to be paid when you think you're fixing patients and it's superficial. Mm-hmm. At least that's what many chiropractors have shared with me as we've done consulting or what have you, is that they want something deeper. They want something more meaningful than just knocking down the high spots and getting the thanks, doc, you changed my life.
Right.
I mean, that's a great start. Mm-hmm. But it really has to do with looking at the whole person. You know, one of the things I remember back from that first seminar in 1981 mm-hmm. was that medicine is interested in the problem in the person. Chiropractors are interested in the person with the problem.
Ah, that's an interesting one.
Okay. That's huge.
Right. Right.
It's so tempting to get into becoming a spinal specialist, you know, joint dysfunction. I call it subluxation, but some people have an allergic reaction to that. But the point is that if your spine's subluxated, you're subluxated. Mm-hmm. And you get the chance, if you want it, for the people that you get to touch who want it, to go deeper than just the physical. And it's about creating an emotional relationship, a spiritual relationship, something that's far more transformational than it is transact. And some patients will say, no, I don't want to go. Fine, no problem. But looks like you'd want to drop a few breadcrumbs to let people know that you're available for something deeper. And but it all goes back to curiosity. You know what the opposite of curiosity is?
No.
Judgment.
Ah.
Okay. So judgment shuts down, makes small, reduces the possibilities of a relationship. Curiosity opens up, expands, and anything is possible. Mm-hmm. That's I'm just a fan of curiosity.
That's a very common thing. One of the more obvious ones is the don't talk to me about your symptoms. It's a very judging conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it would cause a relationship to be stillborn, frankly.
Right. Yeah, and it really freezes that person where they are also in your eyes, and they're gonna freeze you in their eyes as well, for sure, relative to saying stillborn. So yeah. If people want to dive deeper into some of this, that whether they've been new in practice or they've been practicing forever, or maybe not forever, but for a while, how could they get more connected to patient media and more connected to perfect patients?
Sure. Well, let's start with patient media. At patientmedia.com, there's 500 blog posts. You can subscribe to Monday Morning Motivation. It's 150 words, which takes 1 minute to speak. That's why I chose 150 word Monday Morning Motivations that are sent out Sunday afternoon, because it's already Monday in New Zealand. And those 150 word messages are archived there on the website as well. There's, like I say, 10, 12 books that I've written that are basically blog posts, which all come from the patient's point of view. But there's a lot of free stuff on the website that is available. And there's 1 hour consulting that I do over the phone or through Zoom or whatever. So there's a lot of ways of getting plugged in if the patient's point of view is intriguing to you. When it comes to Perfect Patients, the website company, the team has a standing invitation to talk to any chiropractor about their website. This team has looked at thousands of chiropractic websites, and they also know what works and what doesn't work. And without obligation or cost, they will walk through your website with you and talk about some opportunities, how certain things could be upgraded or changed that could actually make the website more powerful and effective. So those are the two ways really to connect up one way or another with me.
Well, I will tell you, one of the best decisions we made as an office was moving our website to the Perfect Patients platform.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's lots of great web platforms that we've been very happy with our experience with that. And I definitely recommend people get a better look at their website, how your website's doing in the new year, and look at have someone, who knows what they're doing, look at it. I wouldn't want my grandfather to give me advice about my yard, and I also don't want to give my own advice to my website. I'd rather have someone look at it like
Yeah.
you. So
yeah,
for sure. Is there any last message that you'd like to share before we wrap out this podcast episode for chiropractors moving into 2022?
Well, nothing specifically. I think we've covered the main things that I was hoping we would cover. I think curiosity is really important. I think where your heart is in terms of trusting patients and whatever value they place on their health, you're okay with that. You can't change people's values by what you explain to them. It's not a rational decision. We're kind of pre-wired before that. I think that there's so much more to digital marketing than social media. It's a great start, but probably, we've just noticed that, Mercola got knocked off of his platform. And if it weren't for the fact that he had diligently over many, 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 many years assembled an email list of people who were interested, who would be part of his tribe, he'd be out of business if it weren't for that. And we don't know whether someday the folks who run search engines have decided that chiropractors are wacky, they're outliers, and we should just, make sure they don't show up anymore. I don't think that's going to happen in the near future, but it could. Mm-hmm. Who would have ever thought that Mercola would have gotten
right?
Okay. So my point is that if you're not even just collecting emails from the patients, start there, do something, lay down the rule that in the new year, you're going to be much more alert to opportunities in which you could build and nurture and cultivate your tribe, even without social media or a website or whatever, through many, many different means. So I think that's really the point is to just going back to our Boy Scout conversation before we rolled the tape, be prepared.
Yes. And, there's so many things that I did in marketing that, don't exist anymore. Newspapers, one of them.
Yellow pages.
Yellow pages and
wow.
Telemarketing. I did telemarketing, and things that were successful at that time. And this may be a good place to wrap this up. You had told us prior to this that one of your, if not the favorite quotes was, it isn't what we don't know that gives us trouble. It's what we know that ain't so. Will Rogers, I love Will Rogers' Follies. And this whole conversation kind of echoes that point. it's not, we think we know something, and it's what we're not realizing, what we don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a wonderful book called Think Again by a fellow by the name of Adams, I believe, that really exemplifies that. And another book, all the Cialdini books deal with that, whether it be persuasion and some of these other issues. But it really has to do with the fact that it ain't what you think it is.
Right.
The world is different than what it appears at first glance. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. So true. Well, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time today on this podcast, and also for taking the time that you put of your life to help chiropractors impact more lives in their communities. We appreciate you at Mile High, and I'll tell you, you've been a great gift to our practice in the things that we've learned and implemented through you. So I hope more people do so. And you've always had such a spirit of giving to the chiropractic profession. I even just remember back being on the Sherman Chiropractic board and say, hey, they need new posters. And I gave you a call and you said, oh yeah, I'll give them to Sherman College. So, really being there for the chiropractic profession, for being engaged and being on the mission and vision along chiropractic, very much so very much appreciate that about you. So thank you for all that during all these years.
Thank you, Danny. I love the principle, and I love the chiropractors who make that principle come to life and operationalize it day in and day out. And I've often been envious of those who know how to adjust. I wish I could do that, but I get to adjust parts, I guess. So
yes, you do. You get to adjust their minds in a way. So I really appreciate that. So yeah. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us on the Mile High podcast. And yes, please check out more of Patient Media and Perfect Patients. And most certainly clear your calendar to be at Mile High in June. And it's nowhere else that you want to be in the first week of June than Mile High, especially if you're a chiropractor and value our foundational principles and values. And thank you so much, Bill, for helping us change spines, lives, and minds in your own way. So keep doing that, and we will keep doing that as well. Thank you so much for everyone. Again, hit subscribe. We look forward to seeing you on Higher Ground in June.